Honor to bring over to the show Kenny Xu. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I was just talking to our amazing audience here at Common Sense America about your article. I've already posted it. And thank you so much for what you were doing and raising the flag on what the Salvation Army is doing. Thank you for joining us here at Common Sense America. I did share with them your background and what you are doing with Color Us United. And I was watching your interview with Greg Kelly and from about a month ago, I believe, talking about Harvard and talking about your book and talking about everything that is happening in our society. But first and foremost, to our conservative audience who are looking for truth, talk to us about the updates on the Salvation Army and DEI. We had Christian Watson on back in October talking about what was transpiring. So I would love to hear what are the updates and what is really happening with the Salvation Army when we walk past those bell ringers. Do we donate?
I'd love to. So I'm president of Color Us United. We advocate for a race-blind society. And we know that America is not a racist country. We know that ordinary Americans are not racist people. And the way we know that is because of organizations like the Salvation Army, right? I mean, these are Americans who give $10, $100, however much money to an organization that claims to, that they don't know which race of people their money is going to. They don't know which nation their money is going to. In fact, 80% of the Salvation Army's donations worldwide come from Americans. Why would a racist country do that? Why would a racist country give to the Salvation Army? And so when the Salvation Army last year came out with a statement saying that we need our members and our supporters to repent, lament, and apologize for racism, it's probably, it was very deeply hurtful to a lot of people who supported the Salvation Army. In Color Us United, we launched a successful campaign to rescind that. But this year, we're going back to the table. The Salvation Army needs to make a statement. They need to say, we believe Americans are kind, generous, the most kind and generous, definitely not racist. And also, we will rescind our DEI initiatives that are trying to teach young people that their lives are made worse because of systemic racism. So that's our goal with this campaign, and people can support our goal by signing our petition at colorusunited.org. And if you interact with the bell ringer and everything like that, tell them your thoughts. It's your decision whether you want to donate. We still believe the Salvation Army is doing great work, but at least tell them your thoughts on how you can get local chapters to stand up.
One thing that's very personal to me and very concerning to me, before I had the show, before I ran for State House, I had lived in New York for quite a while and worked for the Bowery Mission, the oldest homeless rescue mission in the nation now, faith-based. And serving the homeless didn't matter what color they were. It didn't matter what they looked like. You served a human being who has blood running through their veins. And one thing that is really infuriating to me is hearing that, knowing that the Salvation Army, and I was looking at your article again this morning just to remind myself, they have added a racist division piece to this. And my question to you is, what is infuriating me is this. You had mentioned in your article, white people more privileged, but what about the white poor? Are they less deserving? And that really raised a red flag to me, because being in New York all those years and seeing the homeless, it was everybody, and even now, even more so. So let me ask you this. What about the white poor now? Are they less deserving because of the Salvation Army saying who is going to get better treatment? Is that really what they're about now?
Well, they had this equity training, a couple equity, basically, the idea that all racial outcomes should be equal no matter what. It doesn't matter how hard you study. We should force people to be equal, basically. That's what equity is. They had an equity training earlier last year where they asked the white members in the Pacific Territory specifically to stay silent while the members of other races express their grievances. And this is not the way we should be talking about need in society. Your race does not make you a needy person. Okay. Let's be clear. There are poor white people who are needy. There are poor Black people. There are poor Asian people who are
Yeah.
needy. We should not prioritize the
Yeah.
poor of any one race over the other, but that's exactly what the Salvation Army seems to be doing.
Living here, so I will say this, living here in Eastern North Carolina can typically be a very poor state depending on where you look at it. It is just how it is here. And looking around and knowing that as we are bringing on to the show for Giving Tuesday tomorrow, some local organizations and national organizations, but I've had many people say, get the Salvation to come on your show, get the Salvation Army to come on your show. Well, I'm a believer. And I believe in faith. I believe in serving the least of these because that's what Christ calls us to do. But I said, my gut is telling me no, because they are all about saying that, America is bad and all their different things that they're doing through that diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's not what the Salvation originally stood for. And I want to read a couple pieces from your article because I really appreciate you doing this. You started off by saying the Salvation Army website declares, quote, "We meet human needs without discrimination. This simple yet profound mission rooted in the Christian gospel has propelled the Salvation Army to serve millions of Americans in need for over a century through a wide variety of programs that combat homelessness, hunger, addiction, and other forms of suffering." So what are we to do? I kind of want to see numbers because you guys are raising the flag on what is happening with the Salvation Army. Are the donors stepping back? Are volunteers stepping back? Are employees saying no more? What are your thoughts on that?
Volunteers have been stepping back at the Salvation Army because of this business for a while now. And, I have extensive contacts with a lot of members of the local Salvation Army chapters who are saying, the Salvation Army, they're losing their word on fire passion for Christ, right? Mm-hmm. What is this? This is not the Giving Army. This is the Salvation Army. They are a explicitly Christian organization whose purpose is to save people in the name of Christ. And if you turn it to secular ideologies like DEI, which says the United States is oppressive and believes and reifies secular race constructs instead of saying we are all one race and there is no Jew or Gentile or Greek or male or female or slave, or for you're all one under Christ Jesus,
right?
Then you are turning away from the Christian message.
Right.
So I would encourage you, Eden, to bring in that local Salvation Army captain.
Okay.
And give him a platform, but ask these hard questions. Do you believe that America is a racist country? Will your organization stand up to the national organization that is peddling DEI, saying these exact things?
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, my husband and I go to the supermarket and they're already out there and we know the people that are ringing the bell. And it's like, I know in the back of my mind, do they even realize what's going on? Are they even aware of what's happening with the Salvation Army at the top levels? Like you said, bring in the local chapters. I will be challenged on that. I will do that. But ever since I had your colleague with Color Us United on back in October, I've been saying to people, don't talk to me about the Salvation Army, because they are no longer standing for what they originally believed in. So I want to be told that that's going to change. So let me ask you this: with your work as a leadership, as president of Color Us United, have you been able to get any responses out from the Salvation Army as you guys have been really pursuing this topic?
Decidedly negative ones. We launched last year at the turn of this campaign. We got such an outcry from Salvation Army donors. Over 18,000 donors signed our petition at colorusunited.org, which I still encourage you to go and do.
Okay.
It got such an outcry on social media and during the Red Kettle campaign that the National Commissioner Kenneth Hodder of the Salvation Army was forced to release a video. And in this video, he entitled it, "Kenny Shoes War on Christmas and the Poor."
Oh, wow. He had a fun time with that headline.
No, his PR people must have loved to stick it to me, right? A guy who's just trying to point out issues within the Salvation Army and trying to help the Army succeed in its mission. Look, blaming people for racism doesn't help a single person.
Nope, it does not.
DEI doesn't help a single person in poverty. If you are sticking to that mission over your mission of salvation and service, then no, people don't deserve to give to you. So we are looking for a response from the Salvation Army that signifies that they understand the depth of this issue within their ranks. And we will continue this campaign until they do.
I would be very interested to see the dollar difference compared from this year to next year and even before, to see how the dollars potentially have dropped because they are continuing to push this racism card on an organization that was founded on Christ, and Christ was not racist by any means. And it is not even close to being biblical anymore. How were you tipped off to this originally starting? How were you tipped off to knowing that this was actually happening? And my question for that reason is the follow-up. How do we look at other organizations who are faith-based, who are historical, like Salvation Army, to see, are they doing this too? Are they sliding it in there? And is it really taking away from that? What are some triggers that we should be looking for?
Well, I'll tell you about some of the numbers. In Massachusetts, Salvation Army donations went down 20%. There's Illinois chapters donations down hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't know the annual report, which is 2022 annual report that they're going to release early next year, but I hope to come back and talk about it.
Yeah.
So we know we've had an impact. Now, in terms of how do Christian donors and other people who don't want to give to DEI, how do they navigate this issue? I would go and ask your charity that you regularly donate to. I would ask your local branch of your charity, do you have DEI statements? Do you believe that America is a racist country? And if they do, and they will say these things or, say these things, I would say, why? How does this link into your mission of service at all? And if they can't give you a satisfactory answer, then I fear that your donation to that organization may be going into helping the racism narrative instead of helping actually poor people of all races.
Right.
So I would be intelligent in that, and the Salvation Army is the lead example.
Well, let me ask you this. So going back to the original, what were signs? What were the research? What got you guys to this point as to what they were doing? Was it the number differences that you saw, or was it what was tipped off to say, oh, this is bigger than what we realized?
We had a tip. We had a tip from the Washington Times article last year about the Salvation Army potentially going woke. Now, I look, every time somebody says an organization's going woke, I'm always looking into it, right? That's my job.
Sure.
I started contacting the local Salvation Army chapters, going on media, talking about this. And then I started getting a lot of feedback from local Salvation Army saying, yes, this is going on. This is right. It's true. And after I got a critical mass of that, I realized this is not just a local Salvation Army problem or a problem of the national office. This is a problem that is spread throughout the entire Corps. And this is something that I became convicted to attack with my organization, Color Us United, because we advocate for a race-blind society. We don't want race to be in the equation at all in these decisions, and yet it's increasingly becoming in our culture, and the Salvation Army is a staple of that. They have an opportunity right now to make a message that affirms the generosity of Americans. Imagine what a positive statement that would be if they could help to unify America with such a statement instead of divisive DEI.
Exactly. One thing I wanted to ask you, we're going to switch over to just in our final piece of this segment. I was watching your interview with Greg Kelly. I knew him when I lived in New York. His mom and dad were huge advocates and friends to the Bowery Mission where I worked. And so I was watching your interview with Greg, and talk to me a little bit, if you could just give the audience a little insight into Harvard. I was accepted into the Harvard Extension program and absolutely love their leadership classes that they provide online and at the Kennedy School of Government and things of that nature. And do I agree with everything they do? No, but they need people like you and me to stand up and, fight what they are doing at Harvard. So talk to me a little bit about the Harvard work that you've been doing and just the analysis and what the flag you were raising, the truth that you're exposing.
Yes. So Harvard, everybody knows Harvard. It's supposed to be a beacon of excellence for our country, right? This is why you chose to go to Harvard for their extension program. This is why a lot of people want to come into Harvard. So when Harvard tells people, we're going to admit people based on, in part, their race, which is what they're doing, and they explicitly admit that. Then what signals does that send to our high-achieving young people in this country? The signals that it sends is your race is more important than your work. You can get a leg up if you identify a certain way. If you say that you are transgender, you can get preferential treatment. It is the definition of increasing racial narcissism in our society, and narcissism based on sexual identity as well. Yeah. And so this is why I decided I have to stand up for this. I wrote a book called An Inconvenient Minority last year that talked about the real victims of this discrimination. Those are hardworking white and Asian Americans that all they want to do is get in based on merit, and they work super hard. And Asian Americans actually are required to score over 270 points higher on the SAT to have the same chance of admission as a Black person to Harvard. And so this is real discrimination. It's still happening in our country today, in a country that we think is supposed to get over that. No, it's still happening. It's just not coming from, the white nationalists, of whom all of those people have been scattered and, basically destroyed in our society. But it's still being reified in progressive culture today, and that starts with Harvard.
Yeah. Have you seen, what other schools, Ivy League schools, have you seen go in this direction as well? Is Yale and UNC Chapel Hill on that list? I mean, those are the short lists. I'm guessing, but I don't want to say something that's not factual.
Yeah. If you read my book, An Inconvenient Minority, I go into detail about the ideology. It is a systemic ideology, and it is at all of the Ivy League universities. Some it's worse than others, but Harvard and Yale, it is the worst. And the ideology basically says we need diversity on campus, and Asians are suddenly labeled as the not diverse population because too many Asians get in based on their own merit. And if Harvard didn't discriminate against Asians, Asians would make up 43% of the university. And so that, they would say, well, we need people of other races specifically. And they would go out of their way to look at the races of applications. Yale does this as well. Basically, at the admissions committee, they'll review it. They'll give you a plus if you are Black or Hispanic, and they'll give you a minus if you're white or Asian. Moves up to another committee, plus, minus, same thing. Moves up through 4 committees, your application. That's a 4 times plus or minus factor just based on your race.
Okay. I'm like, I had no idea that it was that in depth with regards to the 4 steps. So let's end on this final note as we are headed into the stocking stuffer Christmas season. Does your book fit into a stocking stuffer? I want to promote your book. I'm going to do the same thing with my next guest. I am all about book promotion. So where can we get your book? Does it fit, or should we and what's the best audience for your book? I want to make sure your book gets some publicity here.
I would say my book looks pretty nice in a stocking stuffer.
Okay. All right.
You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, wherever books are sold. Okay. This is a book that sold out. It's a first press release in a month. So, but we've been able to get a second, third edition coming out.
Okay.
Give it to your friend who cares about the future of the country.
Perfect. Well said. Well, Kenny Xu, I'm looking forward to having you back. Come January, let's follow up on what's happening with the Salvation Army. I am very concerned about it at a personal level, but also professional level. And I will take your challenge. I will reach out to the local chapter and get them over here. And Lord willing, they'll come and join. And but on that note, please keep us informed and please keep us up to date. And for all of those who are tuning in, I want to thank Kenny Xu, president of Color Us United, advocating for a colorblind society. Thank you for joining Common Sense America. Have a great holiday season, Kenny.
Thank you.
Many blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye.